The book The Salt Fix by James DiNicolantonio, hard to pronounce his last name, is an interesting read. I read it because I've been interested in salt recently and whether it causes high blood pressure, as I've had some high blood pressure. And it is, as expected, a reactionary book against the low salt advice of the government and this idea that salt will raise your blood pressure. And it is a good read. It's a little boring in style, but it does go into some of the studies that are done on blood pressure and salt, and the takeaway of those is that it doesn't have, taking away salt from your diet doesn't have a big effect on your blood pressure, not big enough to warrant eating bland food. It's about 1 point in each way. And it's also more obvious in people that are salt sensitive. So you might be salt sensitive for very different reasons. Maybe your organs just don't respond well to it, or you're somehow resistant to it. Then you can be salt sensitive, but a very small percentage of the country outside are salt sensitive, and even then reducing salt only takes blood pressure down by 3 or so points. It talks a lot about the history of salt and the history of different civilizations that eat salt. It remarks on the healthiness of some particular tribes or countries that eat historically a lot of salt in their diet and don't have significant cardiovascular problems. And it talks about the levels, and then it has a section on low salt and the low salt diet and people being put onto low salt, what effect it's had and what low salt can actually do to you, which is pretty bad. Your body does need salt. It needs salt to survive, and a lot of the systems in your body need salt to do what they do. Like your heart, it needs salt to be able to function, and so many other things as well. It also talks about the different types of salt, potassium and sodium. Apparently you need more potassium in your diet. It's not as prevalent anymore, probably because of the refination of salt. So a lot of table salt that we use is just sodium chloride, and we need some potassium chloride in there as well to help our bodies work. Hence potassium and magnesium supplements, all natural crystals, and all natural things that occur in sea salt and organic salt, apparently. There's also a large section on sugar, what he determines as the other white crystal, which did surprise me slightly. He spends a lot of the time in the book talking about sugar, and about the upshoot in obesity and the epidemic of obesity at the time of low salt being advocated, and at the same time the rise in the use of sugar. And he places the blame fully at the feet of sugar for not only for obesity but for cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. And there's a big long paragraph on those factors and on obesity, which surprised me reading the book, because I think a book about salt wouldn't be so interested. But it is something about the book which makes me pause a little bit, especially as after that, at the end of the book, there is a section on different types of salts, and he seems to be touting different makers of salt, different salt mines. I think it was Redmont is a salt that he touts as being the best for you, with lots of different minerals in it, magnesium, potassium, blah blah, high levels of them, and it just gave me a little pause. I'm not doubting some of the research that was in earlier in the book and some of those things, but you have to be wary of cherry picking, and you have to be wary of people that are have an agenda. And now I'm not saying that the sugar side of things doesn't have an agenda, and certainly sugar spends a lot of time lobbying and doing shady research to lessen the idea that eating sugar is bad for you. And I think I'm confident now with the number of different books I've read, some of which are referenced in Salt Fix, that sugar is bad for you, and is probably one of the main drivers of obesity. So I don't think that's controversial. But I think while writing a book about salt and spending several chapters telling everyone how bad sugar is, and at the same time trying to sell Redmont salt crystals and different flavours of salt, apparently, I think that is I'm a bit sceptical of that. So I don't think it's fully without agenda, that book. I don't think it's entirely scientific, and I think you should be wary of confirmation bias, even if it's well meant, even if it's not paid off by salt companies, which is a big manufacturing area, by the way, salt. Then you have to be wary of confirmation bias and this person being fully on board with salt. That being said, salt is important. It is, and it has to be. It tastes good because it is good, just like sugar tastes good. We do need sugar. We don't need sugar. We need glucose. That's why fruit tastes good. So salt is good for us. The takeaway for me is, actually the one takeaway he talks about is people who are deficient in salt naturally, and that's a ketogenic diet and a fasting diet, which is what pretty much the two things I'm doing. So I've got to make sure I put salt in things, which I already do. I already put sea salt in things, and not huge amounts. So be wary of that. And also, when you're exercising, it's been fairly well documented that you need what they call electrolytes, but it's basically salt. Salt is what electrolytes are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's not table salt, it's crystal salt, which has potassium, magnesium, and other minerals that would be excreted through sweat. So if you want to make your own electrolytes, get some sea salt, stick it in some water, add some flavouring if you need to, and drink that when you're running or cycling. Salt Fix is an enjoyable read, but I'm a bit wary of it, a bit sceptical of it, just because of the links to different salt companies, and because of his sugar bashing, which I felt was unnecessary. There are other books that do that. Anyway, that's my review of The Salt Fix, and I'm not going to try and pronounce his name again. Bye.